Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. You know, I've learned as a father of 2 children and now as a grandfather that one of the most concerning things about looking after children is teaching them how to be safe whenever they're crossing the road. Road traffic and young children are 2 things that don't always go together well. Now, when I was a kid growing up in Northern Ireland back in the 1960s, we learned about road safety at school through something called the Tufty Club. And I don't know if anybody out there remembers the Tufty Club, but the Tufty Club was set up by ROSPA, the Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents, and it was a way of teaching kids in school about how to cross the road safely, look left, look right, and all that sort of stuff. And it was based around a group of cartoon animals. And Tufty was the main one. He was a squirrel, not the grey squirrels that you tend to see everywhere nowadays, but the old red squirrels before they were almost wiped out by the grey squirrels. Well, Tufty was a red squirrel, and then there was Minnie the Mole, and there was Mrs. Owl, and there was Willie the Weasel, who wore a striped blue and white T-shirt, and Willie was the guy who basically always ignored the safety advice, and in the cartoons would keep getting knocked down by cars. And then you had the policeman, and the policeman was Policeman Badger, which I have to say, looking back on it, I couldn't think of a worse animal to choose to be the policeman to teach the other animals how to cross the road, because badgers are absolutely useless at crossing roads. You know, as I drive through Ireland, you know what, 9 times out of 10, if I see a dead animal on the road, it's a badger. Badgers just always are getting hit by cars on roads. I don't know why it is, but I'm sure the naturalists could explain it to me. But the badgers seem to be worse at crossing roads than any other animal in Ireland. And yet the badger was the policeman that taught the kids how to cross the road correctly. Now later on, they went on with they went into other campaigns. The Tufty Club it actually still exists. You know, there still are apparently branches of the Tufty Club even today teaching children how to cross the road. But for them, in the main headline campaigns, it got replaced. I think it was by the Green Cross Code Man, who was actually played by the same actor that played Darth Vader in Star Wars. But anyway, the Tufty Club, coming back to that, this was an idea to get children to cross the road safely, because back then this was actually a much bigger problem than it is today, because the amounts of children getting killed in pedestrian road accidents back in the 1960s was 10 times higher than it is today. So we can be thankful for all of these kind of campaigns that they've greatly reduced the number of children getting killed on the roads. Of course, you know, the whole idea of child safety was much less developed back then, and I know that I was a kid, I did things that today, if you allowed a kid to do the things I got up to when I was very, very small, you'd be you'd be taken to court for child neglect. But anyway, the Tufty Club was to teach the children how to cross the road. You see, when it comes to teaching children to cross the road, you want to protect your children. And, you know, you want to keep them away from the traffic as much as possible, particularly when they're little. But then one day they have to grow up. You don't want your children always to be standing at the side of the road, unprepared to cross the road until an adult takes their hands and walks them across. They've got to learn to do that for themselves. And that involves risks. Teaching children how to do something, whether it's riding a bike or crossing a road, there's a risk involved in that. And many parents, when they allow their child to go out and cross the road by themselves for the first time or ride their bike out for the first time, will understandably feel nervous and anxious, but it's part of growing up. You can't wrap your children in cotton wool forever. And you know, that's exactly why when people say, well, why does God allow evil in the world? The answer is because God can't wrap us up in cotton wool forever. God has to treat us like grown-ups. God has to, you know, God's purpose for making us was not so like we'd be a little baby wrapped in cotton wool all our lives and never have the opportunity to get hurt or do anything wrong or anything else, because God would just always keep us all nicely wrapped up and all. That we would never fill our potential. We would never learn what it is to love. We would never learn what it is to make right decisions and everything else. In order to grow up as moral beings, God had to make us in a way that eventually we would face the risk of taking wrong decisions and doing things wrong, just like teaching children to cross the road. We do what we can to protect our children. God does so much to protect us. But in the end, we have to make choices and we have to step out as free moral beings. And I, for one, even though there are things happen in this world that I find so hard to understand and sometimes seem so painful, say, wait, God, why did you allow that to happen? Nevertheless, I do appreciate that God wants us to grow and develop. And that means we got to go out into that big bad world and we got to learn what it is to be grown-ups who love Jesus and walk in his ways. May God be with you today. May God bless you. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.